I just referenced is not just about the West. So you were completely wrong, but you were so defensive about the position you already hold that you wanted to paint that information as if it only applied in, area A. And that's simply not true. So go out and do the research.
Okay, that's fair, but I'm just saying that I can think of examples of where, like, for example, if you look at the Middle East, they're still high, or even India, those are highly religious cultures. Like,
so what?
But I'm saying if you look at their way of life.
Yes. Have you looked at it? Because I'm not convinced that you have the first clue. I think that you have stereotypical ideas that you've just accepted without going to the data.
No, I follow this stuff. Like, I follow geopolitics, so I understand, like, what goes on in the undeveloped world.
Are they almost all universally better in every category than they were 30 years ago?
No, some of them are.
Actually, they are. So go research what the shit I told you to go research, rather than just assuming you know. And if I'm in fact wrong, and you have data, present it, and I'll acknowledge that I'm wrong, and I will find a way to contact Steven Pinker so that he can know that he's wrong too. Now, I'm not citing him as an expert. I'm pointing to you because he has sourced data for this stuff.
Okay, but I'm saying you think Iraq is better now than it was 30 years ago?
In a number of ways, sure. In a number of ways, yes. Does that mean it's good? Does that mean it's good? No, it could still be terrible. We're talking about improvement.
It still could be.
Okay, but I'm saying that's objective. Okay.
I think you'll be able to find people that are worse off than they were 30 years ago, and I think that Matt's really arguing for the general trend.
Yeah, I mean, what you're doing is kind of going, oh my gosh, like I had a cat die of cancer this week. Oh my gosh, look how bad cancer is. Screw cancer.
That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying, so you said that life is better off objectively in all these countries than it was 30 years ago.
No, I didn't say anything about life. I said that we live in the best of all times, and that by virtually every measure of societal health, we are better than we've ever been. God, are you going to keep interrupting this? I'm trying to clarify this.
I'm sorry, sir. Go ahead.
Google Steven Pinker, Wall Street Journal. Go read the article and call back some other time.
Thanks for your call, Steven.
Or something. I'm snarky as hell today. It's been a while since I've done the show.
Got to get that snark out, huh?
It's frustrating because the call begins with, hey, why don't you guys believe? Because we don't have good reason. Oh, what's your good reason? Well, I can't think of anything, can't think of any other way the reason that there's something. So we go through those fallacies, then it's, oh, but why are you opposed to religion? Oh, because it does harm here, 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 and here.
Yep.
Oh, but, the fact that the world's getting better doesn't mean that we're anywhere near a goal, anywhere near.
We got a long way to go.
Utopia may be an incredible distance away, and will forever be beyond our reach, probably. But
already getting chopped up.
Alex in Colorado, thanks for waiting.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi, how are you?
Pretty good.
Okay, that's good. I'm a theist.
Okay.
I wanted to ask why you don't believe in God.
Well, first of all, I guess we could start with which God, but basically for every God that someone has presented, I have seen insufficient evidence to warrant belief.
Okay. What evidence, though?
I have seen insufficient evidence to warrant belief in any of the God propositions.
Well, what if belief is based on faith?
Then I have no use for it, because you can believe anything on faith. I can believe that you're a better person than me and take it just on faith. I can believe that I'm a better person than you, then take it just on faith. Faith is not a pathway.
But we all believe something on faith.
Okay, so first of all, I don't necessarily think that that's correct, depending on how we want to define faith. But if you're saying that evidence is not sufficient, but yet you should believe on faith, then that type of faith that you're describing, belief in the absence of evidence or in the face of evidence to the contrary, I have no use for that because it's not a pathway to truth. There's nothing you couldn't justify with that kind of faith.
But you believe in things without evidence as well.
What do I believe in that I don't have evidence for?
You believe in your mom.
Like
She doesn't have
the
evidence.
past, that the world's real.
I have a direct experience of the past. My belief is not the past actually occurred. My belief is I have an experience and recollection of the past, independent of whether it actually occurred.
And I say the same thing about God.
You say the same thing about God.
I have a direct experience of God, just like you can't prove the past is real, but you have a direct experience of it.
So which God are you claiming that you have a direct experience with?
Well, it doesn't really matter for this point, but
okay.
yeah, like we all believe something on faith, right? You don't have any evidence that the
So
world's
you
real.
have a direct experience with what you're calling God, and therefore you believe.
I have mountains of evidence that the world is real. You're basically trying to go down this path that if we believe something in the absence of absolute certainty, which I would say there's no path to absolute certainty, that then we are exercising faith. And my response to that is...
No, that's not what I'm doing. You're defining my position as something it's not. I'm not saying that. I'm saying you don't have any evidence whatsoever when it comes down to it. Like when we talk about what
I don't have any evidence for what when it comes down to it.
For the world being real, so you would cite your experience of it, but you can't prove that your experience of... Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so basically you're talking about the problem of hard solipsism. How do I demonstrate or how do I understand that the world is in fact real? And all I can say is that I experience it, and evidently so does everybody else around me.
And I say the same thing about God, then. I don't.
No, because everybody else around you doesn't experience God.
How do you know that?
Because I'm around you and I don't experience God. Checkmate.
Right, but what if my experience of God tells me that it's not true, just like your experience of the world tells you something about the world being real that
sure.
you can't prove?
That's where we step outside of the individual's opinions and assessments about whether or not they're evaluating reality, and you go to independent confirmation. This is why science doesn't just rely on, hey, I saw this happen and here's my interpretation of it, therefore this is the truth. Instead, we go out and we investigate independently to see if we can consistently produce reproducible results about reality.
Right, but that's all based on some assumptions you would have to agree with, right?
Yeah, so I have a number of presuppositions that are foundational because there's no other solution. Identity, non-contradiction, excluded middle. The fact that while I can't prove that I'm not stuck in the matrix, I have to operate with the reality I experience until somebody shows me a way out. But apart from that, everything else is derived from those foundational presuppositions, which are the same ones that you have to make. The problem is you're adding another one.
I don't see like you just said there. Sorry if I misquote. You said you have to believe in the world that you're directly experiences until somebody shows you a way out. I could say the same thing about my belief in God. I have to.
Yeah, except that now you are adding another thing that you're claiming that you have to believe, and I don't have to believe that until somebody shows me a way out.
I could just say that these laws are rooted in God's nature, and you're adding these things unnecessarily, and I have less.
Okay, if you say that these things are rooted in God's nature, demonstrate it.
Okay, but no, that's not the point, right? When we start talking about metaphysics on this level, you can't prove that the law of non-contradiction is true and all that, right? Those are just something...
So for, let's say, identity, non-contradiction, excluded middle, I presuppose them. They continually demonstrate that they are reliable within the reality I experience. However, you rely on them as well, correct?
Yes.
And you are saying that the reason they're reliable is because they are rooted in God, right?
Yeah.
Okay. That is the part that you need to demonstrate. That would require a demonstration. You are going a step further than what is justified by reason.
Why don't you have to demonstrate that this
I'm not proposing that I know what the explanation for the logical absolutes are. You're proposing that, and that's why you have a burden of proof.
Okay, that's fine. Okay, so I do believe that there's some evidence of God, but do you acknowledge that, like, most evidence, including science, is based on induction, not deduction, so it's not absolute certainty. It's something that we...
I just acknowledge that I see no pathway to absolute certainty at all, and yes, a lot of it is based on induction and inference.
Why are you fixated on absolute certainty? I'm curious about that.
Actually, if you go back in the call, Matt was the first one to bring that up. I never brought that up.
So the fact that you didn't say the words doesn't mean you didn't bring it up. Yeah. When you say everybody believes things, when you say that everybody believes things based on faith, and then you talk about what you mean by faith and how you're just going to believe something based on faith, what you're actually doing is arguing that in the absence of absolute certainty, we must still make decisions, and I agree with that. The fact that you didn't say...
I disagree, but we'll just move on, 'cause I don't think...
Okay, hang on. We disagree on what? Do you think that
Well, you're defining my usage of faith as belief and without absolute certainty. I would say faith is belief without evidence.
Okay.
Okay, belief without evidence. Now it's even worse.
Yeah.
I don't think so, because...
You're wrong.
I want to move on.
You're wrong.
Okay.
You are demonstrably wrong.
Yeah.
We all have to believe things whether or not we could possibly be absolutely certain. We have to make decisions about what's real because we're acting. Okay? So whether or not there's absolute certainty, we have to make up our minds about things. And I would hope we would agree that there are at least some things that we can't be absolutely certain about and yet still have to make decisions.
Do you agree that there's some propositions that you believe that you have absolutely no evidence for?
The presuppositions that I talked about don't have any foundational evidence, but they continue to provide evidence of their reliability. It's like saying, I picked up this pencil and I have no idea, I have no evidence, that this pen works. But then I start writing with it, and now I have evidence for its reliability. To say that this pen it works is different from demonstrating that it works.
You sound like a religious apologist. I could say that same thing with God. Once you pick up God and start using it, you realize that it's effective and true.
Demonstrate that God
please, I can show you this pen works. Can you show me that God works?
Okay. Well, okay. So that's why I wanted to move on from that. I do think that.
Are you going to answer the question, or are we done?
Well, I know the responses that you're going to give, so not to your satisfaction.
Well, I knew what you were going to say before you said it too, but this is a show, so maybe we should say it. Can you demonstrate God the way I can demonstrate this pen?
No, but
no, don't put a but on it.
The analogy is the.
I swear,
okay,
don't put a but on it. The answer is no. So don't pretend that the two are on even footing. When you argue as if they are on even footing, that is dishonest.
I think your analogy is flawed, though, because we aren't talking about the pen, we're talking about the laws of logic. Can you prove that the laws of logic are absolutely true?
No. Yeah, I can demonstrate that they are consistently reliable and that they seem to be. There's no demonstration of anything that violates them, and any attempt to disprove them would have to assume that they were true in order to disprove them, which sets up a paradox.
Gotta get the infinity edge.
Right. Okay. Yeah, okay. I would just say God's more foundational than that, but I know you disagree with that.
And how can you possibly demonstrate that?
Well, the same way you do, it's a presupposition, right?
No. I did not claim that the presupposition was the demonstration. I claimed that there is a presupposition and then a demonstration of reliability based on that. All I asked was, how can you demonstrate that God serves as a foundation for those absolutes?
Right, yeah, I can't do that. That's
okay, you can't do that. So why would you believe something that you cannot demonstrate?
Well, okay, that's why I wanted to get on to my next point, because I think it can be demonstrated through induction.
I just asked you if you could demonstrate it, and you said no, and now you want to get on to your next point.
So not through that specific example, but through another argument.
That was easy.
So how many of these arguments are we going to entertain? Because typically people lead with their best one.
Okay, go for it.
Okay, all right, So can I just tell you, like, what I think a God is, and then you can tell me if...
Yep.
Okay.
Kills.
So I believe that God is a transcendent, immaterial, timeless, spaceless, eternal, uncaused, extremely powerful entity that created the universe. Is that something that would qualify as a God for you?
Can be a shawarma at the same
Well,
time.
I mean, it's your definition of a God, so does it qualify as a God for
I'm
you?
saying if I could demonstrate that, would that falsify your position?
Falsify my position?
What position?
So first of all, my position is that I am not convinced that a God exists. My position is not there is no God. But second of all, you listed off a bunch of things, and I didn't get a chance to write them all down.
Okay.
But I'm presuming that you have them in front of you in a written form.
Yeah. You would like me to read it again?
Read the list one more time.
Okay. Transcendent, immaterial, timeless, spaceless, eternal, uncaused, extremely powerful entity that created the universe.
Entity or agent?
Entity. Say.
Okay, so you're not proposing that this God that you're defining is an actual thinking being?
Well, let's just figure out if this is something that would qualify as a god, and then, like, if it doesn't, then maybe I could add that.
Well, I don't. So my concern is not whether or not it would qualify as a god.
Oh my
My
God.
concern is whatever you define, do you have good reason to believe that that's the case?
Yeah. So I'm saying if I could demonstrate this entity exists, would that make you not be an atheist? That's basically what I'm asking.
No.
Okay, so that doesn't qualify as something that's a god.
Well, I would be an atheist with regard to your definition of God, but, or I would no longer be an atheist with regard to your definition of God, but I would still be an atheist with regard to every other God that's been proposed.
Like if I could prove that this being exists, would you like still have the show?
Oh, you
know what
just
I'm
said
saying? Like,
you just said being. I thought we said it wasn't a being.
oh, entity. Sorry.
Well, okay, so you've got a bunch of characteristics. One of them is timeless, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So existence is necessarily temporal. What do you say about something that exists for 0 seconds?
Well, I would say it exists eternally.
So something that exists for no time exists eternally?
Well, I don't mean timeless in that context. I just mean timeless in the sense that it's apart from time. It's not within our...
What reason do we have to think that anything could be apart from time?
Okay, because we know that the universe began, and we know that it can't begin from nothing, so we know that something has to exist apart from it.
So we don't know any of those things.
Okay, well, we can debate that, because I have good reasons for all those things.
Yeah, the problem
Close
here is
doing
this.
that.
We can't explore beyond the Planck time. And when we talk about time, we're talking about time in our local presentation of the universe. We don't have any notion at all about whether or not time is even a sensible concept prior to the instantaneous after Big Bang cosmology, assuming that's correct.
Well, we have 4 good reasons to believe that the universe began and no good reasons to believe it didn't.
We have a good reason to believe that our current local universe had an origin, but that's independent of whether or not the cosmos or a multiverse.
That's the context I was using it beside. We have 4 good reasons to think that the cosmos began and no good reasons to believe it to be eternal, so I regard that premise
I
as more
have
likely true than not.
no good reason to think that the cosmos isn't in fact eternal, that there has never been a time when the cosmos didn't exist.
Okay, but that's not what we're talking about. Is no beginning, not a first moment in time.
I have no reason to think that it is impossible that the cosmos is not eternal.
Okay,
How do you
regarding this
demonstrate?
premise, like,
How do you demonstrate that the cosmos had a beginning?
Okay, all right. So this is what I want to do, right? So like I said, it's not
Are
like
you serious?
right. We're not talking about absolute certainty. We're talking about most likely true. So if I can show the premise to be more likely true than not, then we can move on and say that the premise is more likely true than not. So I would say reasons why we should believe the universe.
No,
or the
cosmos.
began. Sorry, yes. The cosmos began.
No.
Would be the fact that it's expanding.
You don't know that? I'm talking about the cosmos, not our local universe.
Well, we know our local universe is expanding, and that's enough for the argument.
No, that's not enough for the
I'm
argument.
expanding. That doesn't mean the Earth is expanding. The fact that our local universe is expanding. Actually, I've lost 30 pounds, so I'm no longer expanding that way. But the issue here is about the cosmos. And the funny thing,
I agree, but here my argument just needs the universe to be expanding because
I don't care. That doesn't address the cosmos.
No, I'll explain why. Because something expanding for an infinite amount of time will lead to contradictions.
Except that our universe hasn't been expanding for an infinite amount of time. Our universe has been expanding for 13.7 billion years, and the cosmos may or may not be expanding. You have no way to evaluate that, or for how long, or if time even applies to the cosmos.
Okay, but we know that the expansion rate's speeding up, right?
No, you don't know
No.
anything about. What do you know about the cosmos? The only thing you can evaluate is this local universe. You can't evaluate the container for this local universe, whether it's a multiverse, whether there's some other cosmos. You don't know anything about it. You don't even know if it exists.
I don't know if what exists.
The cosmos. Maybe our local universe is in fact all there is, or maybe it's expanding in something else that you don't have any way to investigate.
Right. Okay, yeah, I just when we use cosmos, I'm just talking about all of whatever exists, if that's just our universe.
Yes,
or the multiverse or
the
whatever.
cosmos is what we typically define cosmos as all that exists. But you don't know what exists beyond our universe, do you?
Well, I have good reasons to think that nothing does other than something that caused the universe to begin.
Okay,
That's
so
not-
now,
yeah.
despite the fact that you can't explore beyond our universe, you think that you have good reasons to not only conclude that something other than the universe exists, but that the only thing other than the universe that exists is the thing that created it.
Right, well, okay, so I'm making the argument that the cosmos began, right?
How do you demonstrate that? Because I have no way to explore the cosmos or its origins or determine if it had origins.
Okay, so I'll lay out the 4 arguments just in 10 seconds, and then you can explain what's wrong with them, okay? So, like I said, the expansion rate of the universe, which you talked about,
That doesn't tell me anything about the cosmos? Go ahead.
Yeah, well, we can, okay. Borguth-Vilenkin theorem.
That has nothing to do with the cosmos?
Yes, it does.
No, it doesn't.
Well, it does. And the impossibility of infinites that leads to contradictions. So
That's 3.
yeah.
Which, by the way, I don't see any demonstration that the infinite is impossible, especially if you're going to be making an argument for something infinite.
But it exists outside of time, so there isn't the kind of
It exists outside of your infinite exists outside of time within our local universe. That doesn't tell me anything about the cosmos or a multiverse. And by the way, you only gave 3, not 4.
Well, no, I'm saying that a multiverse or anything that exists apart from our local regime of space that we call the universe would have to wouldn't be it would have to have space, right?
No.
Got a regime.
How did you determine that?
Well, what you're saying that a multiverse could exist, but it's immaterial?
I don't know what the multiverse can or can't be. I'm wondering how you made this determination.
Well, how did I make this determination? Because, well, if you're going to say that the multiverse is just something that's immaterial, then I just said it's a god, then I don't...
Well, see, the multiverse is a hypothesis about a broader aspect of the cosmos whereby which universes might be generated, and our local universe would be just one of potentially many. But we don't necessarily know anything about any of those at all. I mean, we don't have any ability to explore them.
Right. Well, we have no evidence of it, and I think 4 good reasons to think that it doesn't exist.
Well, you've only given 3.
That's why, like physicists like Vilenkin will say that we almost certainly know that the universe began, and there's no way.
Yes,
to get around it.
he's talking about the universe, and we're talking about the cosmos.
No. He's talking about all the He's talking about all the cosmos. If you read his book, Many Worlds, he specifically says that we know beyond a reasonable doubt that the cosmos began, that there was a beginning there.
Okay.
So I would consider that premise more likely true than not.
Okay, so let's say for a second that I conceded that the cosmos had a beginning. I'm not doing that, but let's say that I did.
Okay.
How does that get us to, therefore, there's a God outside the cosmos?
Okay, so do you want me to read the quote really quick or no? Are you good?
We're almost out of time.
Oh, okay. Okay, so, well, we would say that something can't begin without a cause. And
I don't know
the
that.
Cause would then...
Yeah.
I don't know that. Causality is temporal, and our only ability to evaluate causality is within the temporal dynamic of our universe. We don't know how time might operate or what something else might be that we might call like time or quasi-time or whatever.
Well, so you're saying it's rational to believe that it could just pop into existence?
No, I'm not saying it's rational to believe it could pop into existence. I'm saying that the claim that it couldn't has not been demonstrated.
Well, you have to be saying that the position that it can pop into existence out of nothing by nothing is more rational than the idea that it can't.
No, because I'm not talking about nothing. I'm talking about cosmos. I have no problem with the idea that when no, we're not. I've never spoken about nothing until this point in the conversation.
No. If my premise holds true about it all beginning, then before that there was nothing. That's why, I'm I'm not necessarily
buying that. Plus, this idea, and I'll be sitting down with Lawrence Krauss in June in Toronto, And I'm what?
I have tickets to that.
Cool. So we'll be able to talk about this universe of nothing, because one of the things is that when physicists talk about nothing, they're talking about a zero energy state, not nothing as in ex nihilo, no thing. I've never, and I'm going to borrow from Tracy here. That wasn't me. Or was it? I don't know. Nope. Anyway, I'm going to borrow from Tracy here. I see nothing isn't something you could act upon or do anything to. I don't see how it, even if there was a God that could from nothing produce something. You can't interact, you can't act upon nothing. I've never had a nothing to investigate, and I don't see any problem with the idea that there never has been nothing.
Okay. So, yeah, I just find the idea that it could literally come from absolutely nothing to be a bit absurd.
Well, that's because you're assuming that there's a nothing that something could act on. Maybe if you dump that and start to recognize that maybe there's the possibility that there's never been a nothing, that there couldn't be a nothing, that be nothing is itself a contradiction, then maybe you'd see
no,
passages.
I think that the first premise establishes that the Borg-Guth-Vilenkin theorem, the impossibility of infinite, all that, the Vilenkin quote, all that would show that what we're talking about is absolutely nothing.
I don't accept that it gets us to the idea that behind it all is absolutely nothing, but if it does, that also precludes a God.
Nothing that is made up of any sort of like...
Is an entity something?
Yeah, but it exists apart from matter. It's immaterial.
I don't...
Now we're back to special pleading.
No, well, no, because you're talking about like quantum fields and all that. But that's
no,
actually, I wasn't.
We're not, and you're not either.
I'm not sure I understand.
So here's the situation. We can't explore the origins of our universe, and we can't explore any portion of a cosmos, whether it exists or not, beyond our universe. So at best, we can engage in supposition.
Supposition?
Yeah. So we look at this and say, I just can't believe that something could possibly come from nothing. What the hell is that? But I can't believe that something could come from nothing. But I'm quite comfortable believing that there's something magical, something transcendent, timeless, immaterial entity that caused something to come from nothing. And the only way you can get there is by committing an argument from ignorance fallacy of saying, I don't know what it could be the explanation for the origins, but if I define something and say it doesn't, it's immaterial, it's timeless, it's all of these things, if I define this thing and claim that it is sufficient to bring about a universe, well, then I've solved the problem. And my response to that is, no, you haven't.
Hello?
Hello?
Oh, okay, thank you.
Sure. On that note, we have...
I'm wondering when the destroying is supposed to happen,
Yeah.
because he said he was going to destroy us in the chat.
I guess. The thing is, we look at the universe, we can't get beyond the Planck time. We're talking about time as we understand it, began with our universe, under the best models. I'm not necessarily convinced that that's the case, but I'm certainly willing to accept that time as we understand it is a function of our universe.
Yeah.
Matter in motion. That tells me nothing about what might be beyond our universe. That there might be other universes with other times, that there might not be other universes, that there might be a cosmos that has its own thing that we might call time, or that time might not exist, or that there's nothing like along those lines. So we have this big problem. We don't have an explanation for why there's something rather than nothing.
Yeah.
That's huge. And for a species that thrives on going out and finding the answers, to think about us here in the 21st century when we've got computers and instant communication and we know so much and we know we've gotten past this, we've supposedly gotten past this flat earth idea, even though it's getting a resurgence from some folks. But, you know, we used to think that the sun went around the earth, and now we know that that's better, and we can send out probes and space vessels, and we can explore and we learn more, and then we get down to the very, very small and we learn more about the atoms. Our fear of not knowing the answer encourages us to accept answers before they are sufficiently justified. That's how we came to think that lightning bolts came from the gods before we understood electricity. That's how we came to think that dancing around and spreading a chicken's blood around will heal somebody or make it rain.
Or lamb's blood on the doorpost will keep your firstborn from dying.
Getting to the point where you acknowledge that you don't have sufficient evidence to justify a particular conclusion is the beginning of finding the correct answer, rather than just accepting whatever answer comes along. And I get it. It is, when you look at this, you're like, I just can't believe this could have all come from nothing. And then you have physicists who are saying it did. And yet, when they talk about nothing, they don't mean nothing in the same way that you do. And then you have other physicists say that ultimately, we can't have an infinite regress. We can't have an infinite regress. And yet, what are they proposing as a solution? Something that is eternal, which is just another word for infinite.
Right.
Oh, no. Infinite and eternal are different, because eternal is outside of time. It's not bound by time. Cool. How can you demonstrate that something can in fact exist with no ties to time when existence is necessarily temporal? Something that exists for 0 seconds isn't eternal. Because if it is,
Fuck, I could have used this.
then the rainbow-colored uniform that farts frosted cupcakes is eternal. It's existed for 0 seconds. It's eternal.
And you can't prove that it's not.
And by the way, you atheists are just proposing that the universe popped into existence. No, I'm not proposing to have any explanation for the origin of the universe. What I'm saying is, the people who are running around claiming to believe that a God exists haven't made their burden of proof, haven't made the case sufficient to convince me. And if you're going to call in, as he did, and I understand why you're convinced of this, but he wasn't arguing for the God, any God, that the overwhelming majority of people believe in. This is the most damning thing about theism. There are people sitting out in the pews in church every Sunday who believe that Jesus was raised from the dead, came down as atonement for their sins, and that their acceptance of this, by God's grace, will get them to a better afterlife. There are people who believe that Muhammad was the last prophet of God who revealed the most important truths to develop the religion of Islam. There are people who believe that the Xenu, the ancient warrior, threw people into volcanoes and really hates psychiatrists. There are people who have beliefs about a God. And yet, people will call in and say, oh, well, what I mean by God is something that is timeless, eternal, blah, 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 describing qualities that are not accurately understood, that have all sorts of problems, that are beyond human comprehension. You cannot possibly comprehend eternity properly. You can at best comprehend an abstraction of this. When I was a believer, the God that I believed in was as real as the trees outside, which is why I'm happier to have people call the show to say, look at the trees, because at least they're making a teleological argument. At least they are engaged in something that ties to what people ultimately believe. The caller that just called in doesn't tie to anything that anybody really believes unless we strip away everything tied to every religion. And then what you have is an abstraction that you can't demonstrate, that you can't understand, and yet you're claiming is more probable than not. Probability is a calculation, and it is based on prior evidence. How many other universes are you able to explore? None. How many cosmoses are you able to explore? None, unless the universe and the cosmos are synonymous, which we don't know. How many gods can you demonstrate? By his own admission, none. You want to talk about verbal and mental masturbation? Professional apologists desperately seeking to justify their unjustified and unjustifiable, potentially, beliefs are engaged in the most inane, twisting, oh, it must be this because we can't think of anything else, fallacy. It must be this because you can't prove the other one wrong. Fallacy. Well, it must be this because based on what we understand, this isn't possible. Fallacy. What you understand is not equivalent to what is or isn't possible or impossible. Possibility and impossibility need to be demonstrated, and the rest of it is just talking out of your ass.
Oh my God.
Happy Easter. We'll see you next week.
Could have avoided it, but whatever.
Question, and that's really it.
Okay.
Since you agreed that you believed in him for the wrong reasons, so to speak, as a child.
And an adult.
Could you acknowledge that possibly there is a such thing as a no true Christian? As you know, Anthony Flew coined the phrase "no true Scotsman."
Okay, he didn't, but
a common argument. Could you acknowledge that I did not really understand what I was believing?
actually, he might have. You're asking me if I can acknowledge that. I think you're asking me, and correct me if I'm wrong, that my view of Christianity when I was a believer may have been the incorrect view. Like there's some other version.
I don't. That's not necessarily the incorrect view, because I've watched your deconversion story on YouTube, and you said you went before. You said you accepted Christ into your heart, kind of believed all that stuff.
Yes.
Which is very common if you study the Bible. It pretty much is open about children accepting Christ, coming to Christ from the mouth of babes. God has ordained praise. They naturally know, according to the Bible, it teaches that they naturally know who their Creator, who God is. And you kind of demonstrated that there as a child.
Then I'm just trying to. I don't understand your question, so maybe try and phrase it one more time.
Well, okay. The second part is, since you acknowledge believing for the wrong reason,
right,
does that mean that you are not a true Christian to begin with?
Okay. Yeah. I actually have a video I posted about this, and I think it's on my YouTube channel. It may be called something like, was I ever a true Christian or something like that. I have to look it up. So there is a longer answer to this, in part because it came up in discussions with Ray Comfort. And my answer is this. If your definition of true Christian is someone who actually has a relationship with the risen Christ, then I was never a true Christian. But I also don't believe anybody else is, because I don't believe there's a risen Christ to have a relationship with. If your definition of true Christian is someone who is convinced that they have that relationship, then yes, I definitely was convinced. And I think probably one of the biggest things that'll maybe make this clear for you is I recently did a debate with Mike Lacona on the resurrection, and I did it at an unapologetics conference in a Baptist church. And members of my former church, the First Baptist Church of Harvester in St. Charles, Missouri, that I hadn't seen in 30 years, flew down here to attend to this debate, and one of them got up during the Q&A to basically say, hey, you may not remember me, but back when you were active in the church, we all expected you to go on to great things and, all the sorts of things that you would expect from someone in the youth group who everybody expects to be a minister. And his question was basically, what happened? So not only was I convinced that I had this relationship, but the people around me, family and church members, were also convinced of that. So whether or not I was a true Christian entirely depends on how you want to define it.
Okay. One last question. As far as this past October, you moderated a debate between Airman and Price.
Yeah.
And you had kind of admitted that Airman done a better job presenting the evidence than Price did. Did any of that persuade you towards, hey, maybe Christ is a historical figure, or is that something you're still kind of wrestling with?
I don't have any problem with the idea that there may have been an actual person. I think, for me personally, I remain unconvinced of the mythicist position, which would assert something, Jesus did not exist, that I don't think they can demonstrate. My position is there's still a big problem here, because if Jesus existed, and if he was divine, and if he died for people's sins and was resurrected, etc., these facts should be wholly unassailable. They should be the most clearly attested, obvious. There should be no possibility that someone could object. And so while I'm okay with the idea that there's an actual person there, there may or may not been. There may be several people there. But if you look through the Gospels, for example, and start removing everything about Jesus' life for which we don't have independent, reliable confirmation, we can't independently, reliably confirm miracles. We have no good reason to think that the words that are attributed to him, written decades later, are as accurate as some people might think they were. I mean, I've heard lots of speeches. I've heard lots of speeches in the last year. I've heard some that were incredibly important, and I might remember a phrase from it. But to think that I could recite the entirety of something like the Sermon on the Mount and not make mistakes is bizarre. When we have something like the Gospels, who we have no idea who wrote them, they weren't written by Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, so those are names that the church put on there. If we start extracting all the things that are claimed about Jesus and say, this pile over here represents things we can't confirm, I understand why the mythicists are objecting, because the other pile is virtually non-existent. We can't confirm his birth, we can't confirm his parents, his relatives, we can't confirm his death, we can't confirm even they got the dates on the census wrong. They have different genealogies. We can't even confirm that his name was Yeshua, if he was there. Maybe there were 4 different itinerant Jewish rabbis, because we know there were a bunch of messianic figures around this time that got glommed together and had things added to it. I'm not saying that is the case. I'm just saying that it's not absurd to consider that as a possibility, and this is a damning problem for Christianity, the fact that they cannot unassailably demonstrate that Jesus was in fact a real person, let alone that he performed miracles and was divine, etc. So, I mean, I could concede that Jesus existed. I could concede that he did some of the things that are reported and that we have a somewhat accurate record of things he said, and that still doesn't get me anywhere near concluding that he performed miracles and was divine, or that this divine nature was something that I should care about, because when we start talking about the idea of substitutionary atonement, the idea that a God would come down and take human form and kill himself to serve as a loophole for rules that he created, is already absurd and immoral. So the question of whether or not it's true, I don't side with the mythicists in saying Jesus didn't exist, but I side with them in saying, boy, Christianity certainly hasn't and seems incapable of meeting its burden of proof that he did exist.
Okay, if Christianity met their burden of proof, everything that you just mentioned, which obviously a lot of that you just mentioned could be debatable as far as who wrote the gospel, stuff like that, because there are, obviously I'm sure you know about several of the books out there that kind of trace that back and do attribute Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John to writing those, which, that's debatable. I'm not really interested in that at the moment.
So not even New Testament scholars within Christianity hold to this idea that Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John were written by Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. I mean, you can find somebody on the fringe of scholarship, just like you can find somebody on the fringe of scholarship within mythicism. But even within Christianity, in Christian,
Josh McDowell, some of those is ones I'm thinking about, and I know that
Josh McDowell does not. If Josh McDowell says that Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John were written by Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, I'll buy you a steak dinner.
Okay. Well, I can tell you, James,
but he's still wrong either way.
But here's my view, my position on that.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's not their gospel, it's Christ's gospel. I understand why their names are not attributed to it, because we're not actually trying to give them credit for it. This is the gospel of Christ. So
what do you mean by Matthew? What do you mean by it's the gospel of Christ?
Well, obviously, it's the death and resurrection of Christ.
Okay, but if I write a book about Elvis, is it my book or Elvis's book?
Well, it would be your book, obviously.
Okay. Right.
But we're not talking. See, what I'm saying is, Jesus, we don't worship them. You would be acknowledged for being the author, yes,
Yeah.
But-
So does that mean?
Even if you never wrote the book about Elvis, it wouldn't change who Elvis was. Somebody else would have written the book
Right,
about Elvis.
but you don't get to assume that my book about Elvis is factually correct.
No, I'm not saying you get it. You're an atheist. Obviously, you don't. Obviously,
I don't know what being an atheist has to do with whether or not my book about Elvis is factually
I'm a
correct.
Christian. I obviously I take it on faith that everything written is, as you know, as you know as a Christian, the
then we
writing
can,
shall be
Matthew,
lived by faith.
Matthew, we can have no conversation then, because if you're going to take it on faith that this is accurate, is there anything that you couldn't take as accurate based on faith?
What do you mean in the Gospels?
Anywhere.
Anywhere.
Couldn't you use faith to just be an excuse to believe whatever you want?
Well, yes.
Okay,
But
so
you-
that, Matthew, means that faith is not a pathway to truth, and not a reliable pathway to truth, right?
No.
Okay.
No, it's not a pathway to truth.
Okay,
Just like
so
you
why,
just admitted a while ago, all of that may be true, correct?
Matthew, why then would you say that you accept this thing, the single most important thing, on faith?
Because before I became a Christian at age 19, I read the Bible before.
Read the Bible.
يلا شباب يعطيكم العافية، طفوا لنا هالقضية، ما في حلقة اليوم. يلا أنا نزيه أليخاندرو الأحدب، أعلن انشقاقي عن الجزيرة وهذه بطاقتي. اليوم الجمعة 21 فبراير 2020 بناية الجزيرة، مفرق حي النزهة الرياض، فوق مطبعة القحطاني الطابق الأول، مقسم شرقي، وللتأكيد depends. لا depends مش approved، ما بتعرف أنت. هذا المخرج أبو عبد العزيز قطري، والقطريين ما حطوا لي اسمي بالمكافآت. يمكن لازم شد أكثر، أو يمكن لأني بنتقد قطر والجزيرة وبيسألني شبك زعلان. وإذا ما عندي حساب بتويتر، ما عندي حساب بالبنك. مين هذا القحطاني؟ سعود يلي غلط مع سعد هو شلي اسمي من المكافآت. ولو يا سعود،
ولو هيك بتطلعوا منا، ولو ما تعودوا تسألوا عنا، ولو على القليل تذكروا الماضي. بسمي على شفاف الوفا كنا، ولو
قرر رجل أمريكي يدعى مايكل فولر طباعة عملة مزورة، وليسهل الأمر على نفسه طبع ورقة واحدة ووضع عليها الرقم مليون دولار، وهي فئة غير موجودة بالطبع. حمل مليونه المزور وذهب إلى أحد المتاجر، تبضع بقيمة 476 دولارا. وقف أمام الصندوق وقدم للمحاسب ورقة المليون، منتظرا أن يرد له الباقي، لكنه اضطر للانتظار طويلا ريثما وصلت الشرطة، وربما التقطوا معه صور سيلفي كأغبى مزور في التاريخ. سابقا إلى العناوين. بعد المنشار المنشور وأغبى تزوير في التاريخ، مهاتير محمد يرقص في 95. الصواريخ السورية تبكي الأطفال وتضحكهم. عمران لو ترشح أردوغان بباكستان سيفوز. ومن المبالغة ما قتل من الضحك على الهواء.
سبحان الله يا أخي، يقول لك الغبي طول عمره بيبقى غبي. والله ما حيتعلم لو تعلم من يوم لبكره. يا اغبياء يا اخي، احنا ما خلصنا من سالفه جمال خاشقجي. هنا قال لك ايش؟ احنا الحين بنخدع الكاميرات، ها؟ الحين يقول لك انظر تسريبات.
مرحبا، كنا بالمنشار صرنا بالمنشور. قناة العربية السعودية وملحقاتها الإلكترونية نشرت وثيقة مزورة ادعت فيها توزيع قطر مكافآت مالية كبيرة على بعض إعلاميي الجزيرة نظير نشاطهم في السوشيال ميديا، كما فسرت أشباح تويتر وشبيحته. الوثيقة أو قل الوسيكة ترقيقا وتركيكا كان يمكن أن تشبه الحكيكة لولا أخطاؤها الجسيمة في علوم التاريخ والجغرافيا والديموغرافيا والرياضيات والسياسة والاقتصاد والطباعة ونظام البريد والترجمة والبروتوكول وعلم الأنساب وعلم الإدارة وعلم المنطق. وصدقوني لم أبالغ بحرف واحد، وسأشرح التفاصيل إذا معكم شوية وقت.
تداول مستخدمو مواقع التواصل الاجتماعي بشكل واسع ما قيل إنها وثيقة تظهر حجم مكافآت الإعلاميين في قناة الجزيرة القطرية، ما أثار جدلا وسخرية واسعة عبر مواقع التواصل الاجتماعي لاحتواء الوثيقة على أخطاء تثبت أنها مزورة، كأخطاء في أسماء المذيعين وفي مجموع أرقام المكافآت.
في خطأ التاريخ زعمت الوثيقة المؤرخة ب 12 فبراير 2020 أن قرار العطايا صدر في ديسمبر 2019 عن العام الفائت أي 2018 بدل أن يكتبوا عن العام الحالي 2019، وإلا لماذا يعمم القرار بال2020؟ في الجغرافيا كتبوا عنوان الجزيرة بشكل خاطئ وحولوا مدينة إعلامية إلى بناية. في الديموغرافيا أخطأوا في الانتشار السكاني لبعض المذكورين بالعطايا فنقلوا وجد وقفي من واشنطن إلى عمان ومحمود مراد من لندن إلى الدوحة. في الرياضيات أخطأوا في عملية جمع العطايا المزعومة فزادوا عليها $100,000. في السياسة والاقتصاد اعتمدت الوثيقة العملة الأمريكية بينما لا تتعامل الجزيرة داخل الدوحة بغير الريال القطري. في الطباعة جعلوا اسم وشعار الجزيرة على اليسار بدل اليمين في رسالة مكتوبة بالعربية، أقصد اللغة والقناة. في نظام البريد وضعوا رقم صندوق مغاير لرقم بريد إدارة الشبكة. في الترجمة اعتمدت الوثيقة ترجمة جوجل الحرفية فانحرف المعنى ومهرت بعبارة depends ومعناها يعتمد على بدلا من approved أي يعتمد. في البروتوكول لا تعتمد في المراسلات الإدارية الإعلامية بروتوكولات المؤسسات الرسمية التي تضمنتها الوثيقة. وفي علم الأنساب غيروا الأسماء الثلاثية لبعض الزملاء. في علم الإدارة لا تعتمد الجزيرة مصطلح المدير العام ولا المدير المالي كما طبع. وأخيرا في علم المنطق هب أن الفكرة الوهمية حقيقية، هل ستمر إجراءاتها برسالة كلاسيكية؟ كل ما نريده الآن من الإخوة في إعلام الرياض أن يحجزوا تذكرة سفر إلى اسطنبول، يأخذوا معهم الوثيقة والقنصل محمد العتيبي ويحرقوها فورا بفرن القنصلية. يقولون لا توجد جريمة كاملة ولا بد أن يغفل المجرم عن ثغرة ولو واحدة تقود للتعرف عليه. شباب الوثيقة الأوريجينال ارتكبوا مجموعة ثغرات في عملية تزوير واحدة تستحق لقب أغبى عملية تزوير في التاريخ.
يا أستاذ غبي، ما تعرف تزور لا تزور، تبغى تزور بالغصب يا أخي اتصل علي. أنت حتى من أول تزوير قفطت يا أخي، أنت حمار، أنت غبي.
الشرطة السعودية مشكورة أوقفت دجالا باسم الدين في شوارع المدينة، لكن من يوقف الدجالين على أعتاب البلاط؟
إلى طيبة، حيث تمكنت شرطة منطقة المدينة المنورة اليوم الثلاثاء من ضبط زائر عراقي ادعى قدرته على معالجة فقد البصر والأمراض المستعصية، كذلك الاحتيال على زوار المسجد النبوي الشريف.
يا أكرم الأكرمين يا ذو الجمال جلالي والإكرام، افتح عيونك شيخ، شيخ افتح عيونك، افتح عيونك. هذا كم واحد؟ عاشي كم؟ يلا خلي صلي على النبي. بس هذا معجزة كرة. شيخ هذا كم واحد شيخ؟ خمسة. جماعة خلي صلي على النبي. اللهم صل على محمد. جماعة هذا معجزة القرآن، خلي صلي على النبي.
نضحك ولا والله شيء غريب. خالد يعني الإنسان خالد الإنسان اللي أعطاه الله عز وجل العقل والبصيرة يميز ما بين الدجل والاحتيال. زمن المعجزات انتهى.
ميو هالفورسن طفل نرويجي في السنة الثانية من عمره فقط يمارس رياضة الهوكي على الجليد بكل براعة، لا يخشى السقوط، وإذا سقط ينهض كالكبار. فما بال بعض الكبار يسقطهم الصغار؟ أما آن لهم أن ينهضوا؟ ريوسي أوتشي شاب ياباني أعمى يحترف التزلج على اللوح في مدينة فوكوشيما، هزم إعاقته بدل أن تهزمه. فمتى يبصر المبصرون ويزيح عن عيونهم الغشاوة.
يمينا بالله ما امسككم حاره، انتم ما ادري شلون ماسكين دوله. بالله شوف الورقه، بالله اجمع المبالغ وشوف نفس المجموع ولا لا. يا حبيبي يعني لا اجمالي المبلغ صحيح، لا الاسماء صحيحه، لا العنوان، كاتب بنت يا ابروه ما تعرفها يا اخي، رايح جوجل يا غبي يا
رئيس وزراء ماليزيا مهاتير محمد في سنه 95 يغني ويرقص مع حفيدته على أنغام الموسيقى. إعلام القمار انتقد مهاتير محمد، وعنونت بعض منشوراته: ترك قيادة العالم الإسلامي ليتراقص مع الفتيات في حفل صاخب دون ذكر أن من معه هي حفيدته. لكن حتى نحكي ضميرنا، البعض فعلا ما حب هالمشهد للبروفيسور مهاتير محمد. يعني عمره 95 سنة الله يحميه، بدل ما يكون هلأ قاعد بالبيت عم بيلعب دقين بالوت، شفتوا شو عمل. شيتيتسو واتانابي ياباني هو أكبر معمر حاليا ب123 عاما إلا بضعة أيام، تسلم شهادته من موسوعة جينيس في دار للعجزة. واتانابي الذي يعشق الحلويات سئل عن سر عمره المديد، فكانت نصيحته: لا تغضب. عمنا واتانابي لا يسمع بسوريا حتى يغضب، ولا يعيش الزمن العربي الراهن، زمن الهم والحزن والعجز والكسل والجبن والبخل وغلبة الدين وقهر الرجال.
الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر. وين هالعرب؟ حسبنا الله ونعم الوكيل. بس خلنا ما بلاقي.
تحية لكل فرد من أبطال جيشنا العظيم ومن خلفهم قواتنا الرديفة. تحية لصلابة أجسادهم في البرد والصقيع ونحن ننعم بالدفء والأمان.
بكونة أنا إنسان متعذب بكونه،
لكن الحياة ستستمر، ومن يبكي اليوم سيضحك غدا، والضحك يكون أحيانا أقوى من عصف الصواريخ.
في طيارة ولا هي قذيفي؟ قذيفي؟
إيه أنا قصة جدا بضحك.
بضحك معه قذيفي.
المستشارة الألمانية أنجيلا ميركل تعتبر واحدة من أنجح السياسيين في العالم، وتدير واحدا من أنجح الاقتصادات في العالم. رئيس الوزراء العراقي المستقيل عادل عبد المهدي استقال تحت ضغط الشارع في بلد مصنف عالميا كأسوأ مكان يمكن العيش فيه حاليا. راتب أنجيلا ميركل الشهري يناهز 20,000 دولار، فيما تقاضى عادل عبد المهدي أكثر من $1,000,000 كراتب شهري على ذمة السياسي العراقي مثال الألوسي.
ماكو شيء اسمه راتب $1,000,000 بالشهر. اللي يرتضي ياخذ $1,000,000 بالشهر لا يصلح أن يسمى سياسي عراقي.
على أي أساس ياخذ $1,000,000؟
هو راتبه $1,000,000 بالشهر. $1,000,000 يعني رئيس أعظم دولة بالعالم اليوم أمريكا أو رئيس الصين.
هذا رسميا مثبت
نعم. عادل عبد المهدي راتبه الشهري أكثر من $1,000,000 بالشهر، أكثر من $1,000,000 بالشهر.
ليش؟
اسألني ليش؟ اسألهم هم، هذول اللي أخذوا الدولة كلها فرهود. هسه هاي قصور صدام، خوش صدام وخوش ولد، راح الدار حقه. انتوا تفرهدون البيوت والقصور والمزارع، كل شيء فرهود.
تصرف اولا لدعم مؤسسات المجتمع المدني.
نعم.
تصرف ثانيا لعوائل الشهداء في العمليات الارهابيه.
نعم.
تصرف ثالثا لمعالجه المرضى.
في الجزائر الرئيس عبد المجيد تبون يحذر الوزراء والمسؤولين وجها لوجه. من يمنح صفقات وتلزيمات مشاريع في الدولة بدون معايير تقنية موافقة على بالكم وين يروح؟ يمنح إقامة في السجن مع العصابة.
السيد وزير الأشغال العامة والسيد وزير السكن والسيد وزير الري من اليوم، رغم أن الشيء يصرى في دوار أنتم مسؤولين كذلك، يفو فيكسي دي نورم تكنيك، واللي يعطي صفقة من غير هاد لي نورم تكنيك راكم عارفين وين يروح.
خلينا نقول انه فعلا تميم دافع لهم وانه يبذر اموال الشعب. يا اخي دافع الاعلاميين حاشرينك حشار في اقوى قناه عربيه اللي انت طالبت انهم يلقونها، ولا راح ادفع يا ابوي الرقصات في عبد وسمية الخشاب.
أعلن رئيس الوزراء الإسرائيلي بنيامين نتنياهو أن منطقة غور الأردن ستصبح جزءا من إسرائيل، وغرس شجرة في مستوطنة بشمال أريحة بمناسبة عيد الأشجار اليهودي. نتنياهو يدعي بأن 3 عواصم إسلامية وعربية على الأكثر هي الآن بدون علاقات عميقة مع إسرائيل.
نحن الآن نبحث عن التطبيع السريع. أول طائرة إسرائيلية مرت في أجواء السودان، ويمكنني أن أقول إنه بالكاد توجد دولة أو دولتان أو 3 دول إسلامية أو عربية حول العالم ليست لدينا علاقات عميقة معها.
ظهور معتمرين أتراك في فيديو لاقى انتشارا واسعا يسعون بين الصفا والمروة وهم يرددون هتافات مناصرة للمسجد الأقصى المبارك. تخيلوا أنه جوبه بإدانات ليس من إسرائيل بل من العالم العربي. مثالا وليس حصرا، أدانت مؤسسة تابعة لدار الإفتاء المصرية ما اعتبرته تسييسا من النظام التركي للشعائر الدينية. رئيس الوزراء الباكستاني عمران خان كانت عنده الجرأة الكافية ليعلن عن ثقته بأن الرئيس أردوغان لو خاض الانتخابات المقبلة في باكستان سيفوز.
الرئيس أردوغان ألقى خطابا أمام البرلمان الباكستاني اليوم، وأستطيع أن أؤكد أن بإمكانه الفوز بسهولة في الانتخابات القادمة في باكستان. إنها المرة الأولى التي أشاهد فيها أعضاء من المعارضة ومؤيدين للحكومة يصفقون في نفس الوقت، وهذا ما حدث أثناء خطاب أردوغان.
إعلام القاهرة الباحث عن أي انتصار يحتفي بتسامح قطر مع تعبير أنصار السيسي عن ولائهم له في ملاعب الدوحة، متناسيا أن قطر سمحت أيضا بإجراء البعثة الدبلوماسية المصرية انتخابات رئاسية ليس فيها مرشح واقعيا إلا السيسي.
قلب الدوحة صور الرئيس عبد الفتاح السيسي على تيشيرت نادي الزمالك. انه تعمل ده في قطر وانا بقول خطوة شجاعة.
المريح في رئيس نادي الزمالك مرتضى منصور أنه لا يحلف ولا يقسم على الطالعة والنازلة، فيترك المجال واسعا لتبديل البعض.